We are in week 6 of this Shattered series where we've just been working through the book of Job, and we're providing these little midweek kind of continuations in the discussion from the weekend. And hopefully they're helping you as you're working through the devotional as a launching point just to get some more ideas, maybe think a little bit further and deeper into what we're reading in the book of Job. So this week, we're actually joined by Pastor Keith and by our Trellis resident, Braxton, and we are going to be talking about the chapters in which there's this character named Elihu that just kind of comes out of nowhere. And he basically challenges and reprimands both groups, but he focuses specifically on Job. But as I want us to start this whole thing, we're kind of talking about that challenge, talking about the way that he spoke to Job and the others and said, you guys, you think you've got it all figured out. And he really challenges their way of thinking. Why do you think it is that sometimes when we're in painful situations, that we get stuck in one train of thought, or we just can't seem to move off of a topic?
Well, I think it's because it's a way for our mind to process that information, and almost in a sense procrastinate it because it doesn't have that answer at the moment. So it's scrambling to look for one. It could also be a stress reliever in the sense that our mind proactively doesn't tend to focus on that subject because it'll overlook and make you more stressed.
I like the idea of the answer because it makes me think of like last week in the videos and in the sermon series from week 5, we were talking about that big question of why. We want the answers because it gives us that sense of control. But often in those painful situations, we can't find the answer. So, struggling to find that answer and just constantly searching.
Well, when you looked at Job, he kept getting all these reasons why from his friends, saying, oh, just curse God, do all this. Why this is what happens to evil people. And he's like, this isn't what's happening. You got it all wrong.
Yeah, the answers weren't matching. Yeah.
I think for me I kind of equated it to, I know I've hurt a body part before. And when I hurt that body part, that was all I could focus on, was that pain. Even though the rest of my body was healthy, my mind constantly went to that pain that I was having. And I think it's like that when we're in difficult times, where we focus on that one thing, even though the rest of life may be great, but it just keeps going back to that one trial that we're struggling with.
Yeah, because there's like this nervous system inside of us that's, it's throbbing. And so it gets our attention, and no matter what we do, we can't get away from it. So Elihu comes in, and he just kind of comes out of nowhere. And he challenges Job to be in awe of God. Why do you think that was his challenge? Like, why do you think that he would go there? And this idea of take a moment and think about how big God is.
I think it just gets our minds on seeing God in all things, that he's in control. And it gets us off of that our finite minds. I was just talking to a gentleman yesterday about that, where it's easy for me to see this one small part, but when we think of how great God is, it gets onto he knows the whole picture.
Yeah.
Where I only know this small part.
Yes.
And I think with Elihu doing that to Job is like, get off that small thing that you see and get into that greatness of God, where he's in control of all things and knows all things.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it might even go back to that first idea, just he's looking at Job. He was also looking at Job's friends because he was angry at them too. And he's like, you guys are stuck in this one area and you're not seeing the bigger picture.
Yeah.
You know, you're just so focused. One of my favorite verses or passages in the Bible is Psalm 8. Always has been. Ever since I was a kid, and it's always, I remember the first time I ever came across Psalm 8, I was younger, maybe early teens, and it was in the winter time, and I remember going outside, and you had one of those clear nights where the moon was just like full, and the stars were filling the sky, and I lived in the country, so there were lots of stars. And then you had the snow on the ground that was reflecting everything and just sparkling like crazy. But in Psalm 8, and I just want to read this to you, it says in verse 3, when I look at the night sky and see the work of your fingers, the moon and stars that you set in place, what are mere mortals that you should think about them? Human beings that you should care for them. Yet you have made them only a little lower than God and crowned them with glory and honor. You gave them charge of everything you made, putting all things under their authority. What are your thoughts as you start to read these few verses?
Yeah, so I think this kind of goes back to the previous video about God and his sovereignty, and it shows us that idea that all things were created by him, and he wants that relationship with us because he gives us that authority. He gives us that free will. And going off of that, that's kind of why we worship him. That's why we give him praise, because he's given us that gift of holiness in that sense.
Yeah, oh, holiness, that's fun.
That's another video. No.
Yes,
Video, yeah.
that's another talk.
No, for me, I just love, kind of like Braxton was going, where it's back to that sovereignty of God, that big word.
Yeah.
But the greatness of God and how he created all things. But I love in verse 4, where it, even after it's talking about the greatness, it says, but what are humans that you should, think about them? Or notice them in another version, but also not only notice them, but care about them. And so in his greatness of all things created, every animal, he comes back to the humans, to us. And not only does he see us, but he cares about us.
Yeah, that's good. I kind of look at this verse and it's kind of like this giant reset button for me, because sometimes in life, and maybe I'm the only one, right? But sometimes in life you get going and the world doesn't revolve around you.
Yeah.
But sometimes we forget that and we get distracted and we start to give ourselves like this higher authority where we're just, the world doesn't revolve around us, but it would collapse if we cease to exist.
Oh, yeah.
And this is like this reset button to just get that proper perspective. But I just love how it gives us a proper perspective, but then it also reminds us that God is massive and amazing and powerful. But like you said, he cares.
Yeah.
And he has a plan. And he has given us authority. And there is a mission that he's given to us. So Elihu's challenge to Job's friends, was change your perspective. You guys need to get a better perspective. So how do we, coming out of this, people that are studying this book, what's one thing that we can do to get that proper perspective, or to keep a proper perspective in life?
Yeah, I think the best way to do that is through prayer and scripture, and to make time for yourself and for God, because it's a crucial part of our health, spiritually, physically, and mentally, because it's a way to slow our body down and our mind down, and it relieves our stress. And this goes back to the practice of Sabbath, because it's not just a day to worship God, but to be renewed through him. Because people who practice the Sabbath are more motivated they're less stressed, they feel refreshed and not exhausted. They live statistically longer, and they have a better relationship with God and a more God-centered, positive outtake on life.
Yeah, as you're sharing, there's two verses that I'm like going, yeah, it's simple, but it's hard. You know, Paul was telling a church in the New Testament, and I want to say it's the Colossian church. Could be the Galatian church. I get those books confused sometimes.
Yeah.
But he told the church, keep your eyes focused on things above. Like what you're saying, that scripture, that prayer, that focus, and not on earthly things. But then it also reminds me of the classic Psalm in 46:10 where it says, be still and know that I'm God. That idea of Sabbath, that rest. Remembering He is God. He's in control. He's the one who put everything in place. We don't have to be the master of the universe.
Yeah. Reminds me Leviticus chapter 3, I believe it is, where it literally talks about we have 6 days of work and one day to spend time with God. It's a day dedicated to Him. It just kind of reminds me of it. I don't know the whole verse, of course, but
Sure. No, but it's that invitation to rest. Because in resting, we're acknowledging
yeah.
that we're not in control.
I don't know. That one almost puts it as a command.
Yeah. For me, it was looking at God daily and seeing Him in all things. I know there was a study one time that I've done that was seeing God in all of creation, in all things, every day. It's called God sightings.
Okay.
And for me, it was just thinking about daily, trying to focus on what are the little things, the good things that He's done, and be able to focus on, again, His creation, His majesty, His things, the way He shows up every day for us, where we don't always see it. And I think as I was reading through the different Psalms, and David goes back and forth to, where are you, God? Where are you? Help me with all the people against me. But then he comes back, I will praise you because of, it just goes back and forth. That struggle I think we all have. Where are you? But then when I take time, I can really notice you. And again, in His creation, and I was just recently talking with a gentleman about, I guess it goes back to His greatness and knowing He knows the whole picture. And the gentleman was talking about when his wife passed away was such a dark time, but now he can look back and said, if it wasn't for my wife passing away, I wouldn't be where I am as a Christian and being able to go to heaven. So he has that. So when we talk about resetting or having the perspective, we aren't God.
Yeah.
He knows the big picture. Even when it's a trial that we're going through, He knows the outcome before we even can think about it. And so I think the right perspective is just knowing that God is in control. And I don't have to be. But yet seeing Him every day when I want to take control, that He is the one that is in control of all things.
Yeah, that's going to be the challenge, is us relinquishing control. I don't know how good we are at that, but
That's a video on its own.
that's another whole video. So, all right. Well, hope this has helped your group or your whoever it is that you're doing this with, whether it's a group or just a couple people. But take some time, work through the table talks, and just spend some more time digging into these verses and exploring what the Bible has to say about this proper perspective of God.